I have a tough time placing this story in a particular genre because it's not strictly science fiction as we all know it, but there is science in it. It is fiction. So what not qualifies it being science fiction? So yeah, I personally loved the story. I'll get to my thoughts at the end, how I looked at it as a reader, then as a writer. Why don't you all go first? Swati, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I have not read anything like this personally with my own eyes, but I could hear Sumit's stories because we hear Sumit's stories. So I could hear his voice in it, kind of that, I know that this is where you've picked up some of your ideas from. Uh, I was thinking that it's doable. I can also write something like this. I've never read anything like this. This is a very interesting concept. Why not try writing something like this? Thank you very much. Otherwise I would have never, ever, ever thought of writing anything like this. But I haven't picked up the pen and paper this morning or yesterday. I only read it yesterday. So I hope that by next week I do have something written along the line. It was confusing initially. I found it very confusing. I had to give it a second read, but it was very interesting also.
It actually warrants a second read because the first read is just you reading from a reader's perspective, right? You're just trying to piece together what is actually is happening here. At least for the first 10 points, 10, 20, 10, 15 points, you're trying to piece together what actually is happening here. But then you get the hang of it. At least once.
On the same side, I'm reading Virginia Woolf, A Room of One's Own, and where they're saying that women don't have a voice and women don't have, back then, she was talking about the past, that women didn't have a voice and they didn't talk about their mundane things. And this is the perfect anecdote, opposite of that, I mean, not only is it a woman's voice of what she does in her daily life, but also showing that she can be intelligent and she can think of various so-called intelligent things, but then she doesn't even know the number of kids she has. I mean, breaks all all rules over there. That what a woman would know. Obviously, she would know how many number of children she has. Just mishmash.
What did you, as a scientist, I think, would you be able to, like, would you have thought I can put like definitions in between my fictional pieces?
I never thought that.
Right?
Yeah.
There's literally dictionary definitions in between, and it connects so beautifully into the main theme of the story, right? That's what I'm trying to bring in. You can have a scientific bent to your story, not have it out of this world. It's in the kitchen. It's in the kitchen. The story is in the kitchen, in the supermarket, but it's still out of the world. Yeah.
And it's real life. I mean, when you're thinking about a scientific thing, you do switch modes and you start thinking of your real life stuff that's going around you, and then you switch back and you do see the similarities and contrasts in that scientific concept in this and your real life. But I don't see people writing about it that way.
Yeah. Kirti, go ahead. Yeah.
Actually, when I was reading the story, it reminds me one of the, I just few years back, I read one book written by one of the BRC scientists. The lady was in, so she retired, and she was a very good cook, and then she written a book. I just don't, I'll give the name of that book afterwards. But she, whatever her experience as a scientist and whatever her experience as a homemaker, and she combined all these scientific things, and that book, beautifully she has written those books, that it was a science in the kitchen kind of thing. It was written in Marathi. So this book, this entire story reminds me that thing, that he said that the kitchen itself is a big lab, and the lady who operates it, she's a scientist. When we say that she measure the things, she make different experiments, she makes all the ingredients and all, we can say the chemicals, and they come out with. But it's not only that thing. we started reading a scientific thing, and then slowly her emotions, it related with her emotions, and beautifully her emotion get blast. So I think the writer have a terrific knowledge about the scientific terms, and she beautifully connected with uh, a woman's emotions. That's a very nice thing.
Yeah, and on sentence levels too, right? The prose is tight. Like she's saying what she's wanting to say. I don't feel anything excess in this. Maybe the lists, but even then, after I've read it so many times, I don't have uh, a different view. It's like Kinjal reading James Joyce, the uh, Arabi, so many times that she cannot separate it from herself. Kinjal, what do you think about this?
First of all, I didn't understand what is it, whether it's a listicle or whether
Mhm.
it's a manual, or also whether it is speculative fiction in that sense, or because the lady is so intelligent, this is just stream of conscious.
Mhm.
So yeah, in that sense, I was studying it more on a sentence level because that is where I am right
Yeah,
now personally. So I was doing that, but yeah, it's a very, for me it was a very interesting way to tell a story. So, and the fact that, at the very basic fact that, oh, this is also possible in that sense, and to begin line by line, I think the title was very intriguing to me, because science always talks about the birth of the universe, and the story is about the death of the
better.
universe. Yeah, so basically that. And I saw some attempts where the author deliberately tries to slow us down. For example, sugar frosted flakes, you cannot read that line fast.
Yeah,
So the author is being very kind, I think, to the reader in this by deliberately slowing them down. Like, take it slow. There are one line paras. So I know I'm being harsh to you by writing something like this, and take your time. So, and
does she
yeah,
consider the
that was my
reader
first.
while she's? Do you think she's considering the reader's perspective? Uh, I I didn't think so, because she's giving out references. She's not explaining some of the references, like Solomon's
But
decision.
she has sentences which are fully in capital. There are sentences which
Uh,
are one line
and
sentences.
though, yeah,
So I felt that there is a kind of hand holding just by the mere numbering of the paras. If you look at it that way,
yeah,
there is hand holding to the reader. In that sense, if you, I looked at it that way, that she
okay.
is.
I thought it was a way to confuse the reader, the numbering especially.
Yes, even
I felt that the numbering, if the numbering had not been chronological, it would have been confusing. But the
Oh yeah,
mere fact that the number is chronological, uh,
yeah.
the reader is with us, right? She's not left us in the dark, and she's plus insert two, like, you know how you storyboard ideas, and those things which you do while storyboarding or plotting are there
Mm,
as part of this story.
yeah.
So that was uh, yeah, it's a difficult story, but I think the reader is kind, the writer is kind.
Would you attempt something like this in structure level? Not, I'm not talking about at the structure. I mean, inserting of
So
scientific
if I
things. Yeah,
had not read the story, I would not have attempted it, but now that I've read it, I'm sure to give it a try.
yeah. Like multiple things, right? Insertion of scientific things, the listicle format.
So for me, this was more interesting. I might not do it speculative fiction wise, but I might try
Yeah,
it in a travel story.
the listicle format.
Yeah, so you know,
Uh,
you travel like this, then a bit of information that you get this bus at this time, or this museum is open at this particular time, or this museum is about this time, and then the story continues.
yeah,
So I might try to do it with some other subject matter, for instance, travel. But yeah, this is very interesting.
yeah. Arun? Swati, you're
So
on mute if you're saying something.
I would imagine in a travelogue you could talk about the mileage that you're getting with the car suddenly, uh, and then you come back to visit. You go to the museum details of when it opened and when is the busiest time, and then you get back to your story again. All sorts of.
Yeah, I can see the possibilities here because it's a listicle, right? I'm imagining if it wasn't a listicle, would it still have worked? If it wasn't in this format, would it still have worked? Yeah. Okay, then mull on it. Arun, yes.
it is a hard story to write. It is hard because of the structure of it and the sentence construction. Very difficult to write like this. I don't think it is a story of lists. Though it has been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that doesn't mean it is a list. It is a discrete point story. So what the writer was doing with 1, 2, 3, 4, she's giving us something, some words, some sentences, and some plot points, some concepts of science. And what she's trying to do is that she's trying to do it as if a mosaic. She's saying that I'm going to give them discretely, but in your mind they will be together, and it will create an effect. But within that, say under 29, I don't remember exactly, there is a list. There are lists at some places where she's minutely listing uh, listing the supermarket, what is there in the supermarket racks, or what is there in the kitchen, in the house. Those are lists, though there is not, it's not marked 1, 2, 3, 4, but the idea is same. Idea is that discrete points means my story is discrete because 1, 2, 3, 4. Within that, I'm also going to give you discrete informations. So that's why the story is so hard, because what is easy to make it, create a continuous story. That now I'm on train, now I'm going to get down to the station. At the station I'm going to meet someone, that person has taken out the pistol. It's a continuous story. But here she's bringing lot of discrete points, so discrete points within discrete points, still holding the story is extremely tough to do. And she's doing it with great mastery over her prose, great mastery.
Yeah.
And what probably, sometimes why this is a one sentence, sometimes why there are long paragraph, and at the end, the climax, why this is a very long paragraph, right, when she's crying and the repetition is happening. It is actually the musicality of it. From the beginning, very slowly it starts, and then there is a little bit of movement. Then again, it slows down a little bit. Then it goes to crescendo, and then it ends just like that. So probably, like like Bach's lot of compositions, they are mathematical in nature.
Who is
One,
referenced?
continuously, right? At least twice, right? Twice or thrice. I don't remember
Thrice,
exactly.
thrice.
Thrice, right? Thrice. So I understand that why she was doing it. Sometimes why she had to give only three sentences, under different different numbers, simply because she was creating musicality. She's saying that, okay, now you have to stop a little bit and then go to the next one and go to the next one. Now you have to read a little bit longer. I understand that. Is it a science fiction? I have no idea. No idea. What do I miss in this? I miss the emotionality of it. It is extremely clever, but I'm not getting I'm not getting connected with it. If there is a chance, I would have written it in very traditional format, because then probably I would have given that emotional movement of that woman uh, more properly. Here, I wish to get connected with her, but then I have to go to the next discrete point, right? So my rational mind is working more than my emotional mind. That's it.
I agree with the musicality aspect, because certain things like Bach, Mona Lisa, and she not remembering her children are brought in three times. Like it's introduced in the first, and then in the middle, and then at the end paragraph, everything comes to the sound of three is there. So she brings it home every time. So it's carefully done that way. That way, I think it's very precise. Like she is very precise. Even I I don't know if this was intentional or not. Sarah Boyle, the word Sarah Boyle is mentioned 24 times. Only Sarah is also mentioned 24 times. It's like a conflict between her previous self and her married self. So that's how I don't think a story that in which she has thought about so much. That's just a random fluke kind of thing. It should be it. I'd like to believe that it is intentional. That thing might be intentional.
Sumit, if I may just add a
Yeah.
point about Arun saying it was mechanical, like in point 7, if we are calling them point or para 7, she's the para ends with help 5 times, but I realized that despite that affectation, I had no connection to the character. By then, the story had become so mechanical that I was unmoved, and I think that was deliberate more than an lapse on an error. I think she intended it to be that is. Yeah, that is just what I wanted to add.
Shankar, are you here?
Yeah, yeah. I really had difficulty with this story. I am very conventional, very traditional. I prefer some kind of linearity or some kind of inversion on itself. This story really threw me. I agree with Arun and Kinjal in that you don't really get involved with the character. And I did notice a certain number of patterns, and I liked how she focused on eggs at the beginning, and at the end, she has more about the eggs. I also felt that it was a bit of there was a feminist voice in it. And she talked about, and this was written in the 60s, and she talks about women who don't love their children, and maybe her main character is a lady who doesn't know how many kids she has. So that was kind of controversial at the time in a way. And she does talk about the, what does she say, the nullity of just giving birth and having kids, and is that all there is? I like those parts more than the other sections. I didn't know what to make of the fact that she puts in like insert here and she has various number. I thought the first that the only way I could reconcile the fact that she had all these numbered lines was that maybe she was trying to make it appear like how you would have these scientific papers while she was kind of addressing that. And meanwhile, the motif of the story is that everything is going to shit and the whole world is coming to an end. And she kind of ramps it up for Sarah Boyle, but she's kind of reporting it to you in a very unemotional way, I guess. The definitions. Whether I would have written this, I wouldn't have written it if you had not recommended. I wouldn't have read it, and I still won't write it because I can't write it. I mean, I think it's very masterfully done, but I think I can also see the way she structured it to some degree. But I love the fact that she uses these run-along lists all over the place. I mean, she talks about 20, 30 items. It's like somebody speaking very fast, non-stop, just not even stopping to breathe. So that's the effect it gives you. It's a bit hysterical, and that works as a counter to the emotional distance I feel from the story. I mean, if I'm reading a story about someone and it's the entropy that's bringing up the end of the universe, you'd expect some kind of stake in it, but there is no stake in it. So, and I agree with everyone. I think she's doing it deliberately. But I had to read this 2, 3 times to even get a basic grip on it. And this is so far out of my uh, the kind of story I read, as you know, and also the kind of story that I would read, or the kind of story my friends would recommend me to read. So, yeah, it was very interesting. I completely did not think this could be a story. When I started reading it, first I thought, is this the story, or are they giving some kind of reading guide? What are all these numbers and definitions? Then I looked up the link again, and then I found out that was the story. Yeah.
while she's giving those lists of items, she doesn't hold back, right? She's
No, exactly. That's what I love about it.
everything. Yeah, there's no etc. in it. She's giving everything.
No, exactly. He doesn't leave anything out.
Yeah,
When she talks about the cleaners, my God.
yeah.
That's it.
And when she lists the number of items in her bedroom, it felt like a surgeon talking about, how many
Mhm.
the instruments they're using in the surgery room so that they don't mistakenly leave something inside the body of their patient. So that's what I thought. It reminded me of that.
I think it was masterfully done, but deliberately a little cold. I think that's also part of the message of the effect of the story.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to resort to sentiment in any way. And if you can write a story about the end of the world and not resort to sentiment, that itself is a feather in your cap in terms of net effect you're trying to bring about in the story.
Can I say?
Yeah, Kirti, go ahead.
Yeah, because maybe I was just, but these points and those extra explanation about things and other things, I think these things are more useful if you convert this story into drama or you shoot something. For me, there are a lot of the writer has written a lot, she keeps a lot of space to convert it into a picture. So I was actually started visualizing at the mid of this story. That's why then I find it interesting. So all those things is my perspective, but I like it. She was giving, if I want to convert it into drama, she was giving me a lot of things to
Like
play.
proper set design notes.
Yes, proper thing. And then lot of other things will come out from these things. So I think she has imagined that to if we had wanted to do animation this, then again it's a very good stuff she has written. It's my that
Yeah.
as a lot, but I'm not forcing this.
Pradita, have you spoken? Yeah, please go ahead.
So, what I thought about, first of all, I loved the story. And for a housewife who's going through, I think she's going through depression and she has OCD for sure. Given how she mentions lists, how she numbers things and everything, I think given that it's a story about a housewife going through the ennui of household life and everything, it's a very different approach to writing a story about such commonplace things. Because imagine if it were written in the same way that a traditional story is written, nobody would probably read it, or people would read it and dismiss it. But this detached way of writing the story in a listicle format, and giving us inserts, scientific inserts in between, that gives us a very detached perspective to the main character. And we're not allowed to come close to her. She is like a lab rat, so things are happening to her, and we are just observing her from the from like a glass pane. So we're only seeing the slow unraveling of this woman in a day in her life. So I thought that was very clever, because even if there are feminist themes in this story, she has dealt with them very scientifically, so that there's nothing of the drama that is generally there is in such kind of stories, in such kind of themes. So I because of that, I thought I found the story was very, very compelling. And initially, yes, it takes a little bit of time for you to adjust to the way the story starts. But once you get started, once you at places, it's even funny. So once you get the hang of how it's going, it becomes a very compelling read. Because like how Kirti said, it's visually compelling. You can visualize how it's going when she describes those lists of things that are there in the bedroom or in the drawing room, or how her day is progressing, or how she's finally unraveling in the kitchen, throwing out things and everything. It's visually very compelling. I mean, you can imagine all of that. Imagine it like like a whirlwind going down. So it's I thought that it was it's a very interesting read. But on a personal level, like how some of you feel that, you could not, and I myself have said that, you felt detached. On a personal level, however, maybe that's because I am also a housewife, so I've had to go through all of this. I thought that, I understand what she's going through. And especially when she writes down messages for herself, like how she's written a message about the waste, on the top of the lid of the wastebasket, or on the top of the washing machine, or on the stove.
Help,
I
help,
think
help.
if you don't look at them from a detached perspective, and if you don't keep telling yourself, okay, all of this has a reason in the larger picture of life, then probably, with so much chaos and with so much burden on one person, anybody would just lose it, like how she loses it in the end, because it just becomes too much for her to handle. So I think on that level, I could understand what she's going through. She is definitely obsessive about a lot of things. She might have to go see a shrink, I think. But then the thing is that I could understand where this is coming from. So yeah, so that's what I thought about the story. Definitely one of the best stories that I've read in the last 1 year. I mean, this is the first thing I've completed in this year, and I'm really glad that I read this, because this is an absolutely different way of writing a story. I personally would have never thought of writing it this way. I would have gone out with like, she felt this, and there would have been a lot of emotion and a lot of drama. But the way she has handled this, I mean, wow, seriously, I was very happy that I read this. So
Then
that's it.
you brought up a point of that things are happening to her, right? She is not actively doing anything, and also
Yeah,
I
apart from
also thought
cleaning.
that I also thought that the obsession and the OCD it won't
Yeah.
be,
Hmm.
maybe it is OCD, we don't know. But
I thought it was OCD only because she's posting messages everywhere. She's
yeah,
counting the number of things, and
she's
who does
numbering
that?
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
So,
also thought how would we write something uh, like without resorting to like OCD I've seen in movies and TV shows and books and stuff.
hmm.
It's always the latching of the doors 100 times, buttons 100 times.
Yeah.
Nothing
Yeah.
is this evident. There are 819 items in the room. She knows the
Exactly.
819 items in the room,
Yeah.
and she wants a certain modicum of control over the things, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
That's why she's labeling things, even mislabeling things, because
Hmm.
I want to call the hand cream cat because I can.
Yes, yes. So she is a control freak. We can see that
Yeah,
because she's losing it over little things, tiny
yeah,
things like, things not being in the proper places or what. So, I thought that, I think I've even like written it down. I think it was point 13 or something that I finally realized, okay, she has OCD now. So because she's just pointing out things and like putting everything in order
yeah,
and obsessing over cleanliness. So yeah, I thought she has OCD.
yeah.
On one
There,
side, she's obsessing about cleanliness, yet on a diaper dustbin,
Hmm.
she's writing with lipstick.
I do. Yes. Ruining her
Contrast, I
lip.
had to read that 3 times to make sure that I read it correctly.
Yeah.
Diaper dustbin.
Yeah.
no, but Swati, but that is in her control, right? She's cleaning the things that others have messed up,
Right.
Hmm.
and chaos is happening all around her, and she is trying to sort all of those things.
Yeah, I know. The way I saw it, the only real tragedy or chaos that happens in the story is the death of the turtle.
Turtle.
But then, of course, the turtle to her maybe means it's a sign of near immortality, or things being in order, or there's some kind of hope. And when the turtle dies, she loses it all. So, and thereby losing control. So I, I found her very OCD-ish. Is that even a word?
Snail, uh, have you read the story?
I'll confess, I was confused and I didn't go beyond the first 2 or 3 paragraphs. It's not something that I would like to, I mean, like, it's not my choice of reading, let's say,
Hmm.
so this thing, I just, maybe I'm a very lay reader, but the thing is that if it doesn't catch me in the first paragraph or so, then I sort of start losing interest.
Very
But I'm
tall
going.
order. First paragraph.
The best beta reader, right?
So no, listen, the thing is that and I'm not I don't the this thing put me off sci-fi, you know. I said, oh well, it's going to be one of those things, but now when I realize it's like the story of a housewife and all, I'll probably give it a second more definite reading. Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. Urmila?
Yeah, I also found it difficult to read. I found it difficult to read, so I continued from the beginning and then I went to the end. And I started reading from down up. And as I started reading down up, I started making sense of it. Then it made perfect sense what was going on.
I'll have to read it that way.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And it is very interesting because, you know, she's showing the tragedy of women, and the fact that we feel that is OCD actually says something about us, not about housewives. And she's talking about the kind of demands that are made on women and what a drudgery it is to day in, day out to do the same thing again and again and again. And then therefore, because you are surrounded only by that world, then you remember everything. Because tomorrow, if your kid or your husband asks you for something, you are the one who's going to find it out and give it to her, him, whoever it is. That is why you know everything in the household. So it may be a list that has been written down, but it is a list that every woman has in her mind. And she knows it. She knows her whole of her household. You ask her for anything and she'll get it for you. And what a drudgery it is. And no wonder it collapses. It is a meltdown that happens to women again and again, and it is not recognized, and it is seen as emotional, and it is seen as, हाँ वो औरतों को होता है kind of stuff. And just because she has put it in scientific language, we sit up and we say, oh, this is very interesting. And the fact that that turtle is actually a symbol of continuity for her. That's why she breaks when she realizes that continuity is not going to happen. And the fact that the universe ends when the energy ends, and her energy has ended, and she's the universe actually, which takes the whole household forward. And when that ends everything for her, that meltdown happens. And I find it fascinating the way she has described children and children's bodies. It is so violent. I haven't read that description ever of children's bodies in that way. And to be able to do that, amazing creativity. I have to say that. I don't know how she got that all together. And yes, it is a feminist writing, completely and totally. And she hasn't given it a direct thing of feminist writing. And that is very good. So yes, I really liked it.
I'm glad you liked it, Urmila. There, but I just had one point. It might be you might be true that every woman has every woman and a mother has that thing in where the placement of but she's taken it to an extreme, right? She's labeled everything. The 819 items, she's labeling all the 819 items. So that's why we said.
She's taking it to the extreme because that is how it is in the minds of women. She's just putting it down in writing, and that's why we realize it.
Yeah. Deepthi, have you read the story?
Yeah, I did read the story.
What did you think about it?
Yeah, like all ladies here, I love the story, definitely. And yeah, I love the fact, I mean, how the chemistry, physics, facts are alternated with the mundane things. So, and yeah, and I mean, she's shopping for the cake, arranging the party for her child, cleaning, all this thing, the daily grind and everything. And then in the end, she just breaks the eggs meticulously cleaned this thing, floor and table and everything, and then she herself wants to spoil everything. Okay, done. Now it's enough. And as Urmila pointed out, death of a turtle, maybe it reminds her of of that she's taking things too this thing too hard or something, and it's time that she take care of her own life. This is a very basic understanding I got. And now, important thing, if Arun has chosen this story, then it has, deeper meanings. And I'm waiting for his explanation. Arun, you're on mute.
Haven't. Sumit is the culprit. Blame
Okay, then
him
yes, because
or
it's
thank him. It is up to you. I say blame him.
So it doesn't have a that deeper meaning. Maybe, I don't know. What do you think about how the mental illness was I'm assuming mental illness.
Yeah.
The obsession was portrayed in this.
Yes.
What do you
yes,
think
some
about it?
sort of obsession. I think all ladies have, Sumit. Believe me, all mothers and all homemakers. They have a long list, though they don't put it writing. But even this happens with me. I put it on the next day. Okay, I have to clean this, do that, make that for the kids, this, that. It never. I'm never able to tick that list. कि हो गया, चलो आज का काम. No, it's never done. It always goes to the next day. And sometimes I do feel like that I should write it. All the things I need to do. And that's mental illness. Yeah, maybe extreme.
Or maybe it's just showing us, right? Like these are her thoughts, correct? It's her thoughts. She's not putting it into action until the end, where the violence coming. And violence is breaking of eggs, which we know she'll only clean up later, knowing her, right?
But it does happen, Sumit, believe me. You do things, okay, I clean for 2-3 days, and I said, leave it. It's nothing happens according to my choice, my wish, so leave it. And this is also, good, wake-up call for women that take care of your life and take care of your mental and emotional health, and invest time in your hobbies, and your life is also very important. Whatever you feel. It's not, we don't want to be, just dedicated to children all the time. It's a long paragraph. She's buying that, shopping for the cake and everything, and arranging this, and one of the friend gets choked, one of the kids, and then she pets him and all that small snake thing. Small details, she has picked up. I could relate to every small thing. My kids also do the same thing. Are वो toy kahan hai? Well, whole complex box is empty. Finding that some nonsense toy. So,
that particular point, right? That kid choking. If I would have written it, I would have given a pause there. The kid is choking. She pauses, and then But then I realized that her actions and her thoughts and actions are different. She's thinking of, like, there are like 4-5 instances of she thinking of killing kids or. But the thoughts and actions are totally different. Her actions, she's instinctual and she saves that kid with, but she doesn't pause there.
Yeah, but it's not a.
Remember a tremendous Marathi movie about a woman who was not able to cope with that. And then how her life goes completely, out of kilter, like. So that these are facts, those little things, I think the larger world doesn't understand, especially when you're a housewife and tied down to a lot of other issues,
That's why probably, Snehal, it is our responsibility to write about these. If it is happening in our minds, the world should know it.
You know why we don't write it? All of us know why we don't write it. Because we are all good women, and we like to be seen as good women. And even the thoughts that we have about our children when we are unhappy about them, we find it difficult to express them even to ourselves. And occasionally we might do it to our friends who we think are sympathetic and would understand, but we wouldn't dare write it and say it is my story and these are my thoughts. Because we are expected to be so perfect and so loving and so motherly that if I do that, my image in the world would crash.
Exactly.
So I
Not
wouldn't
just
do it.
that.
And yes, I agree completely that we need to do it. But the fact is that, and occasionally, not too often, I have come across shorter pieces which women have written about their lives, including their children and including marriages, which is mm, eh, extremely in the same lines. So of course there are, voices that are coming up, but as a general rule, that's the reason why not.
There are
Thank you.
women who are still writing about these things. I mean, you see more of them now in in different formats, not just in books, but also in cinema and in music as well. You see all of that coming across. But like how Snehal points out that yes, there is this reason that women are like kept on a pedestal, and you're expected to be on that pedestal, never go below it. So that's one reason. And the other reason I think is also because there is this the tag of feminism that attaches to that kind of writing that deters a lot of people from reading it. And a lot of people who do read it, they think, oh, this is just some feminist bullshit, and it's the same thing going on and on again, women asking for their rights, women fighting for this and that, women always raising a clamor over nothing at all. I mean, some people even go on to say that, if you have a cushy life inside the house, what do you have to complain about? I mean, if you were out in the workforce, you wouldn't know what kind of, upheavals a working woman goes through. So there is that problem as well. So when you have to, so that's why I said, the way she has tackled this story is very different, very refreshing, and is actually a very smart approach, because a lot of us might not even read this story. We might think that this is another feminist piece of literature. Why read this? Why bother with this? If this were written in the same humdrum way, then none of us would have sat up and took notice of it. So the way she has portrayed it is very intelligent. And but yeah, I agree with what Snehal is saying, that there are reasons why women don't write about this, because of how people will react.
Yeah, it's a question of people. There is a general impression of the woman who manages everything, who's perfect, a wonderful wife, a good mother, everything like that. So even this is a small maybe point, but the thing is that the women go through emotions which are discredited.
True.
That is also there.
And we don't even admit our emotions to ourselves, The fact is, we're not really honest
Exactly.
with ourselves. I mean, one time emotion comes, and after 2 days, I said, what did I think like that? It's not proper to for me to think on those lines.
Chaitali, what did you think about?
Okay, I read it very quickly before the session, so I didn't read it as deeply as I should have. But even though I found there were very in between very relatable incidents, like the kid choking on that, very funny pieces, or even the Russian doll. So I remembered, like, okay, we had a doll like that, or even that just weird remark about, okay, what is that, wall or clock or something, two sort of people never actually meeting, where we have things like that around the house, and we do have some odd connections to it or thought to it. So that, and I sort of related a lot to her behavior. So I don't know, maybe I'm OCD, especially with all the labels and everything. Today was a deep cleaning day for me, so I still have stuff around the house, and so especially, I think, I don't know, seems a good sort of story for me to uh, I think. And whatever actions were taken, it will seem more I didn't see this specifically as a feminist story, but a need for control. And somehow the underlying thought is there all this is to her life. She's in that point of time ki she is an intelligent person, she's thinking thoughts, okay, this is what. And one question I had, like, what what makes this a sci-fi story, other than the, I sort of did get, okay, this is heat death of the universe, that felt more in tangent with the story. but some were random thoughts, which is fine according to her sort of listicle format. But other than that, I don't know how is it sci-fi in the traditional sense? Because this seems like very symbolic or metaphorical to me, or I haven't read this kind of sci-fi. I've read similar stories, but not sci-fi. And I did try writing this format specifically. It was like a shopping list with snarky comments. So, but I might try to do this again. I don't know. Feels inspiring to try this format. At times, I was very happy with her sort of long descriptive objects around the house, and at times I felt it was too much. So, and maybe that was just because I gave it a very quick read. But overall, I really sort of enjoyed the format of the story. This is a format that I really like. And even though the narrator voice is very distant, we are not actually in her emotions or thoughts, I still found it very relatable.
The genre, I don't know what the word is, genreizing of this particular story has been kind of an issue in the since when it came out, because people have been debating is this actually sci-fi, because the metaphor, as you said, is the heat death of the universe and the chaos the universe is tending towards, and the chaos in a house. They are parallels.
It's not the actual gimmick of the story.
Yeah, but there is a sci-fi bent to the story, because she is thinking of if the whole planet becomes like California, if there are green aliens, there's a sci-fi bent to the story. I would still call it sci-fi. Why not? There is no definition for that genre particularly, but I would still call this. I would still call this sci-fi.
Because I haven't read this kind of sci-fi story before, or not under the categorization as sci-fi at least. So that was a thought that I had.
Yeah, the point of making this story, making you all read this story, is like sci-fi is not just about swashbuckling aliens on board SS Enterprise or something, but there are really good stories, and you can maybe write really good stories set in a speculative thing with human emotions. The human emotions are across. Good sci-fi does that. Good sci-fi and fantasy always does that. The base is always the human emotions. The everything on that is is the writer's imagination. Sarah Boyle has just 2 speaking lines. And the second one was so trippy. She says Sarah, and it says Sarah.
But again, that is sort of the para that follows it. Like, okay, there's some quote by whatever, like dust or something that happens before, and if you sort of behave actually according to some theory or whatever, apply it doesn't apply. I think that was a very witty sort of behavior for her to sort of even put it in there.
In my document, I've highlighted certain regions where alarm bells ring in the reader's mind. Like the first one was over the stove she had written help, like 5 times help. The second one was this one, that way madness lies, says Sarah. It is so innocently put. As she's just given it and left us to think about it, what exactly is going on in her mind. I've written down this comment like, is she playing out the character that she's supposed to be in her head? That's what I thought. Is there a perfect life that she has defined for herself, that maybe society has defined for herself, and maybe she is playing out the character called Sarah Boyle in that narrative? That's what I thought. I felt this was a brilliant line too, and she just gives that and then leaves it and goes to the Dada principles and all that stuff. And by the time that the third one is Sarah Boyle is never quite sure how many children she has. That was that was one of the shocking sentences. And then again, when it's repeated, we are familiar with her state of mind by then. I would go as far to say that I am in that I am in Sarah's mind at that point. So this one doesn't strike as an alarm bell. Alarm bell. It is her state of mind. I am in a state of mind, and this makes sense to me. That she doesn't remember her children. This makes sense to me.
For me, one of the things that was very interesting was 33, the first line, Sarah muses or is mused. I've never seen word usage like that, which was very interesting in that sense, creating distance from herself, which then she repeats as she says that, the mind body duality, the
Yeah.
time space duality, so matter energy duality. So that kind of spacing and distancing was very interesting to me.
And in that point too, right, when she says the this one is so harsh. Otherwise, they would have been salted off for for the leeches that they are, and the race would have extinguished itself in a fair, sweet flowering.
I
Uh,
love that paragraph.
yeah,
Love that paragraph.
and then she goes to the insert five love because she needs to remind herself, you know,
Exactly.
you have to love your children. You have to love your
That's so
children.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know whether that para 33 where she talks about children like that was brave, brash, or just attention seeking. Because she knew that if
Okay.
you hit on topic which is so delicate, like you cannot
Hmm.
hate your children. If you do that, you're just crying for attention.
maybe,
So
Which
but
is
keep in mind
entirely
when
true.
it was written to, right? It was
Hmm.
written in the 60s. Maybe it was written for attention, but maybe she's thinking that Sarah
Going
Boyle is
through
feeling that
that.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, being a mother of a child, of a cranky child, I know that sometimes I
We
think
have
like that as well. I'm like, okay,
all felt that way.
seriously. I mean, I'm like, okay, if children did not serve a purpose, probably will not be having them at all. We'd all be thinking like Sarah Paul is
no, I
thinking.
mean, I'm not a mother, but being the child I was, I understand why my mother had me. Like, it was pointless. I am useless to her and very selfish. So I understand what you're saying, but that is why I'm
Hmm.
specifically saying that making such a point in 1960s was more
Yeah,
like now we have ladies telling the story. We have women writers like
exactly.
even Elena Ferrant. You see that the mother-daughter relationship is very uh, conflict oriented.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, more so because it was written at that time, I felt that this 33 was brave or brash or.
I think it also came on the tails of Betty Friedman's The Feminine Mystique, which was kind of, if not the first, but at the forefront of the feminist movement. But to put it this way was seriously brave, I think. I don't think she was doing it for any other reason. It's the only way to show that you have all these feelings, right? To put them in a story and show it.
Sylvia Plath had written a uh, poem after she gave birth to her baby, and it is full of this. It reminds me of that. It's a very short poem, of course, being a poem, but it describes what she's feeling, and she's not describing it, oh, so wonderful, such a pretty baby, I'm so pleased. Nothing of the sort. And it's amazing how she has written it. So yes, and it is not attention seeking, it is the truth.
Also, just a counterpoint to the arguments, the debate that was happening earlier about the drudgery of a household. I completely agree to that. But I just want to add a point that when you do something regularly or you work in a landscape, you label everything in it. Even as writers, we label our bookshelves. Um, I'm just giving an example that my father is a shopkeeper. He goes to the shop. It is drudge. It's a very boring kind of work. He labels everything in his work environment. So I'm just giving a counter argument that possibility is that the place where you work or your landscape of daily livelihood, you tend to label everything. It might not be, I know a lot has been said about the drudgery of womanhood and being a housewife, but I'm just saying that if an astronaut goes to the moon, he labels everything in his spaceship because that is his work environment. So yeah, that is just something I wanted to add.
Maybe it is because you want to relieve your brain of the task of, to keeping, remembering everything and keeping this thing. So you said, okay, brain relax.
Yeah,
Now you
in
need
the
to
sense, when
forget.
I was studying psychology, labeling and categorization is one of the ways that you ease the energy of your mind.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I'm not saying that she is labeling everything because she's a housewife. I'm saying anything that you do, you tend to label the work environment around you.
But not physically labeled, right?
And sometimes even if it's not labeled, as women, if you're in that landscape and you have to sort of manage it, or other person responsible for it, even without labeling, you know where everything is, right? So it's not even a system of numbering everything. Like, I remember my grandma, everything around the house she knew where it was, what time it has to be out. So they, and because she was not educated, she could do numbers and everything orally, but she had to rely on her memory, but she knew everything around the house.
Yeah, but Chaitali, I mean, women of our age, they want to relieve the brain. I mean, this is relaxed
Yeah,
brain, and
because yeah, that
don't
yeah,
get
I
tired
do
just
label everything.
don't get tired just by remembering everything around
Yeah.
the house.
And during
Just
every lockdown, recently, what has our experience been? How many kilos of atta do I have? How many kilos of dal do I have? Do I have salt? Do I have sugar? I don't know when we're going to open the shops again.
Yeah.
We need to have a
Yeah.
extremely detailed list of how many pencils we have. Do we have enough pens for the exams on? Do they have enough notebooks?
yeah. To
Yeah,
make a nice
just
notebook and write everything in it and
I'm
tell.
still working on my quarterly iterative list. So, so iterative and seasonal. So I sort of identified very much with this, and that's more a need for control, or maybe just being prepared, so that
Yeah.
something, if anything else other than the normal comes up, you have time, space, and energy to give to it.
So,
I think it's
Sudhit,
sorry,
I
you
just
can go
wanted
on.
to add that more than the content of the story, I was intrigued by the structure of it, especially in point 2, where she says fingernails grow, babies' fingernails grow as does the hair of the dead in their graves. I was wondering whether everything that happens, the rest of the things, her actual numbering and her labeling, is it literal or metaphorical? In the sense, we are talking so much about her doing this, and I mean, when I read it, I did not even guess she has OCD, because I thought this is sci-fi. Perhaps there's a alien or a robot living inside this woman's body. So I'm just saying that all this that we are basing on arguments on, are they metaphorical or literal, like as
She has she has labeled them, right? I
Yeah,
think.
she has it. She has labels for even the number of lines on her face. I mean,
yeah,
like
Yeah.
but
she's
i
numbered
i
them
was
down as
just
well.
because this is speculative fiction, I just assume it's because an alien who is inside a housewife's
I
body, and
understand.
because
Yes.
she has to identify the objects on this earth, so she's
Oh,
doing this,
okay.
was my reading.
Yeah,
That can
I
be
for a
okay.
Hmm.
That can
minute I
also be a
was,
reading, because
yeah, for
Hmm.
not that to that extent, but she's not feeling comfortable in her own body. That I got, and that she needs to uh, refamiliarize with the place that she is in again and again and again and again.
And that
That's
is why I thought that this is a manual, like an alien has come to earth with a manual, and
uh,
Hmm.
that is what, and the obsession with
yeah, yeah.
cleaning, and because earth is so dirty. So that was my reading of it, and yeah, just saying.
That can be one, but
I sort
then
of had
she goes back to her childhood and be playing
Hmm.
center field and all. But
I thought
That's
that
an
was an
interesting reading.
implanted memory. I thought that was an implanted memory. I'm so sorry. That was my reading. I think I have to read it again. I've read it completely wrong.
No, I also felt the same way when I was first reading it, and then I read it, and then I left halfway in between. When I got back, I thought it was a normal person, but when I first read it, for first half of it, I thought it was an alien too.
One of the things I felt so relieved that the husband isn't mentioned at all in the story. Her mother is dead, her husband is not mentioned, her mother-in-law is there, but she's just rambling about
Yes, I know.
death and decay and cancer.
No, but then what I wondered about was in the last paragraph when she is throwing things about, where was he? How come he did not wake up, or how come he did not come? And where were the children? If they were napping, I mean, even children can wake up. Why were they not mentioned at all? So I was just wondering that why is the husband absent, so absent? I mean, does he want to incur her wrath later on that you were absent from your children's
Children's
birthday
birthday.
parties? I don't know.
But that is symbolic also, isn't it? That the men are
Yeah.
absent.
Yes, I know. In all of this they have no role or little
Yeah.
role actually.
Not physically, then
Or
yeah.
that they don't take the role. It's not that they can't have the role.
True.
Chaitanya, you
And
were
yes,
saying something?
especially, sorry.
I sort of briefly thought that she might have been an alien because there's just a line after the children's description, right? They're in bed squealing, and there's just this line. They appear edible, and there's she remembers some bloodthirsty something. So that felt like, okay, she's an alien. Because everything I could relate to, that I don't know. Because that was a line that was sort of, is she an alien? She's not human. I don't know. But other than that, I didn't feel sort of get any instinct where she's an alien. That is the only line I felt that, okay, she's not really a housewife. She's from some another planet.
Plus the process of birth through Russian dolls.
Hmm.
So that was also very unearthly.
That was metaphorical, no? Though she's comparing her, like birthing a clone of herself from her own body. That's a comparison. That's a metaphorical comparison to the Baba Russian dolls.
They
That's
come
what I thought.
twice. They come twice in the
Yeah.
story, though.
Also, there's one anti-consumerism went to the story. I wouldn't say it anti. It's not totally anti. There's a love-hate relationship between, because Sarah Boy loves the products, because she is she laughs, she gets hysterical while collecting all those products in a shopping cart, and there's products named throughout: sugar frosted flakes, Coke, and all of these products that are named specifically. There's and the plasticity of California, where people, plastic surgeons and everything, and uh, that's one aspect I felt in the story. That's one of the themes I felt in the story of anti-consumerism. What did you guys think about it? Could we have done without it? Could we have done the story without it? Think from a writer's point of view. Is this story filled with too many themes? What do you guys think? Like there's
I didn't feel it was consumerism. She was buying lots of cleaning products because she wants to clear her life. So she's buying everything, just, as though buying a product is going to actually clear your life. We all know that it won't, but she's like hanging on to this hope that, if I buy one of everything, then magically everything is going to clean up. And before that, it was just an ordinary housewife's shopping list of what she buys before her kid's birthday party.
No, but even with that, I think she starts with a cereal box, right? So there's this thought, okay, it seems overkill and it might not actually be good for her kids. And then she has headlines in her thought, okay, this might not be good for her product. So I think even though cleanliness and everything is a part of it, there are some actions which are very sort of protected towards kids, or you do it as a routine as a parent. So like just that thought, okay, is like, shouldn't I have bought the cereal box? Like, why are this? It seems overkill. Even if I saw that, I would be very suspicious of such a product. So I think even the consumerism is part of her daily life. I feel it's a at least when it's her kid's birthday, it's going to be. So I think that was part of the story. The overkill I felt, maybe because I'm not so much, or I haven't read that much sci-fi, was especially the sci-fi element. I think heat death of the universe I got, but there were some sort of things that I think could have been left out.
Like
Uh, even though I
the
enjoyed that para of art or something,
Dada
new art, but I
Dusham.
think, yeah. So I think even with leaving that part out, it could have given me a lot to the story. Wasn't necessary, like some parts, not all of it.
Suppose you
Not
were
the other one, but where there was a art piece or something, that art for
that one, right?
yeah, that one.
Yeah, that's the Dada one, right? The Dadaisms and painting the mustache on the Mona Lisa. That part.
Yeah, that one.
That's the one. Yeah.
I thought that the mustache on Mona Lisa was an oblique way of disregarding the mother-in-law, because in the earlier paragraph she mentions that as the mother-in-law is just talking and she's working through the everything that needs to be done with the party, she then starts thinking about how many children she actually has. So I thought that she considers even the rest of the family as bachas only that she needs to take care of, and while the mother-in-law is just going on and on and on, and she's the one who's actually working. And then comes up the line about the Mona Lisa having a mustache, and that's like, I thought that's that's her way of belittling the mother-in-law in her mind, that I mean, make fun of her. So that's what I thought. That's where I thought that that's why she mentioned that line there.
There is a one possibility is that like Dadaism was against traditional way of making art. Probably this story is also against traditional way of making writing short stories. So that possibility is there, because what Duchamp was doing during that time and some of the Duchamp's contemporaries, very strange. Even if we look at now, those art pieces, they're very strange. And I think there is I don't remember exactly, but I think there is this hope, right, that one music will come that is going to completely change the music. One novel will be written that will refurbish the words, and the art, one art will come that will, again, I don't remember the verb, exactly the verb that has been used, will change the verb. So probably this is also a little bit of hint toward new way of creating things. So probably that's why that has to come. And I mean, no reference is just standing there. uh, Almost every reference got connected with something later, previously. Some
Yeah, even Mona Lisa was brought in before, but then she brings it back, and even that is the third time she mentions Mona Lisa. Like there's a tihai in that writing too. The question I wanted to ask to all of you is: would this story have worked without the scientific inserts, without the dictionary definitions, Wikipedia-esque definitions?
For me, no. And this is a woman who can think. She is aware. There's a life beyond this sitting and guarding kids that is out there, and she's missing it, and she remembers it. And you need that contrast continuously, that she's aware of what's happening. I'm just looking outside my window. We have painted storks that are just standing day after day in front of a nest, and I can see it from my window, and I'm thinking that every single day there are mothers sitting over their nest in every animal kingdom, and they're so bored, tired of sitting there and doing nothing else. And you need that contrast to remind them, the reader, that this woman has another life.
For me, the scientific inserts actually, I thought that they were, a way of foreshadowing the theme of the next paragraphs. So, like, about entropy, she starts with entropy. Then I forgot the next. But then, I mean, I thought that they foreshadowed the theme of the story. So I that's the reason why it worked. If she hadn't mentioned those inserts, I think we would have been a little lost about what is the theme of the story. Though towards the end, you generally get the picture that the larger theme of the story is the unraveling of it all, chaos, and mortality. But I thought that it worked only because she had those scientific inserts in between, so that she could tell the reader in a way that this is what's going to come now.
Others, Arun, Kinjal, what did you think? Would it have worked without?
I thought it was very, very, very clever, because you are taking a ordinary, as they are always called, ordinary housewife, and then you're putting it what you really highly regard, science, and you're putting the two things together, so you cannot ignore her now. As someone earlier said, had you written it just without the scientific references, it would have been the usual Rona Dhona story of a woman who is going through the usual household things. But because the writer has cleverly put that, and I don't think so it's only clever. I think for her it is, these are metaphors, and she understood the underlying meaning of those scientific theories, that she's able to use it so beautifully with the ordinary life. And I also find it fascinating that the sci-fi uh, issue is so interesting, because it's almost like if it only were an alien, he or she would understand what a ridiculous thing a woman has to do in a household. So I think it's very clever and very wise.
Yes, I mean, I will agree with Urmila. This story could be written a different way, of course, without the scientific references. No problem. I believe that even then the story would be, though I am going to differ a little bit there, as that the story could be very powerful, of course, with nuances, right? More and more emotional and personal nuances we bring to the story. Story becomes richer. But this is such a different flavor story, right? So it feels nice because it is a different one. And I have also put it in the chat
Yeah.
window of
Chicxulub.
another story of T.S. Board. Uh, 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 very, very faintly similar. Okay, so also a kind of a scientific fact and a personal life happening,
Okay.
and it is also very powerfully emotional. Because, and there is also connection of Boyle, right? So Sarah Boyle, T.S. Boyle, in that case. Yeah. So,
Also, Arun, connection. If we are making non-canon connections, a fly dies in the in this one too. There's a fly floating.
sorry.
A fly dies
Yes.
in this story too. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So Sumit, when you asked me about, I think that nothing, I would not like obviously take out anything from the story. I think it's very cleverly done, obviously, because I am a housewife. But I feel that reading this book on the side at the same time, coincidentally, there's a bit in the book about women writing and women writing.
Is your internet?
I
Is your
can't hear
internet bad?
properly.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it was mine.
Yeah.
Kinjal, you were saying
Yeah,
something.
so man womanly right. I was saying because coincidentally we are reading Virginia Woolf's A Room of Her Own at the same time as we were reading this. It it could not be helped that there was some interchange between the opinions, and at the end of that book they speak about man womanly writing and womanly man writing, that you cannot separate the two. And I found that the story does that. It tackles a very sentimental thing in a very mechanical way, and hence finds that right balance. So that is why I found this story very interesting. Did I make sense?
Yeah. Shankar, any other thoughts?
I I can't take that leap of imagination to see how the story would have worked without for certain inserts. I took the title of the story and then the scientific definitions, they all work for me. I think the story works marvelously. The more I think about it, the more I'm amazed by it. But yeah, I think it's first the story of a woman, and then the science has been clamped around it very beautifully to to make to make it to make a bigger impact. That's what I think.
I, for one, can't wrap my head around how she wrote the whole thing, because there are references. The references go back and forth, back and forth. There's a musicality to it, as Arun said, and I've uh, I've highlighted some things, like talk about being obsessive. There are certain sentences.
You have to make it a little larger, Sumit. We can't see.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that is far, na.
Sorry, who is speaking?
Acha.
Yeah, the lines I marked in purple, I thought were like so beautiful. Lying in bed at night, sometimes the memory of the act of birth, always the hue and texture of red plus theater seats wash up. We can go to. I'll send this over to anyone who needs it later, because I've marked it, I've highlighted it and kept notes on it extensively.
Yeah, please do so.
Sumit, share it to me.
Yeah. You can
I
share it
just
on.
had a question, like, if you like, for all of us, if you had to write it from a different point of view or a different narrative structure, what would you choose? Because this is not it's a author style narration, right? It's showing all her actions, but we are not really in her head.
There are 2 points I've also marked in this. There's a certain there's an indirect speech in that when she drinks the coke and smokes the cigarette, the sweet juice of my youth or something like that. Sweet juice of my youth. That's an indirect speech. That's by that point we are deeply inside Sarah's head. So that didn't feel anything out of left field for me. That she's saying, and it's not in quotes. The line is, the coldness and sweetness of the thick brown liquid makes her throat ache and her teeth sting briefly. Sweet juice of my youth. Her eyes glass with the carbonation. She thinks of the heat death of the universe. It flows for me because we are in point 20 now. We are familiar with Sarah, and this doesn't sound as it belongs here. I feel it belongs here. I don't know. If I want to take out something, maybe the lists they get in the shopping cart, but even then I feel it's too important to the story. And there are certain things that I had observation that the things mentioned in capitals are the literal notes that she has put up all over the places. The paras mentioned in capitals, and it's numbered in this way because that's how Sarah thinks. She thinks in lists. So that's what I thought. Yeah. Other than that, all of my thoughts are in the PDF. If you can, I don't know if the format is supported. I don't know. Will any other thoughts?
Yes, Sumit, I have a question here.
Yeah.
Are there these scientific inserts means show the intellectual aspect of Sarah, or are they voice of the writer means comparing all this universal phenomena with mundane things?
I think it's what Sarah is thinking. Even though it is in third person, it is not a very omniscient third person. It is from her point of view. We are on her shoulders, observing, looking at things. We are privy to her thoughts and everything, but it's not omniscient. We don't know what other characters are thinking. We just know what they're saying, what the mother-in-law is saying, what the children look like through Sarah's perspective. they look like pink seals that she wants to eat apparently.
3 times they have mentioned she has received good education from a Eastern University. So,
Yeah, that's those 2 points are mentioned them as reassurances. Like whenever she thinks of something extreme, she goes back and to think that no, this is what I am. I am a I am a wife, and I'm a loving, caring wife and a mother, and I'm from a good. I have a good education and all that. That's what I thought.
it's amazing. I mean, you remember all the physics and the chemistry, and you can relate to your routine life
Yeah,
happenings.
she's so smart. She's not has she references Bach. She has references that Bach has 20 children later. She brings it to third time later.
Very
Then
intelligent.
she references the the Dadaisms, the the physics of space and universe. Yeah.
Fit enough to be a scientist. I mean, this woman and stuck in some household cleaning and celebrating birthdays of kids.
Yeah.
I think, and that's why she gets frustrated. Also, I mean, she can't manage.
So,
all.
like Dipti, if you wanted to write, or if Chaitali wanted to write a similar story, if you want to write it about, homonyms and definitions of various grammar, English grammar words and how they relate to similar things that are happening in your life, I mean, do you
It's not easy, Swati, I suppose.
I'm sorry?
It's not easy. Can you? I mean, you are a cell biologist. Can you relate to
Yeah.
everything happening? I mean, whatever you see in your
Swati,
slides.
you attempting something, right, with elements and stuff?
Yeah, with elements, I'm trying to do something, but that's a bit different. But this is interesting because, yeah, let's see if not this Sunday, next Sunday, if I can write something not like this, obviously, not at this craft level, but, something that spurts out of this. Because right now, viruses, I'm just thinking lots of people are following what's happening with the coronavirus and how how is it similar to our lives, what's happening inside the house versus what the virus is doing at the border of my
I would so love to know a cell biologist's point of view,
yeah.
even an ex-cell biologist's point of view on the coronavirus and the lockdown. Maybe have a protagonist in the lockdown who was a cell biologist and who keeps thinking how this virus works and how I am. And also, she keeps thinking that she has to physically teach her children because there is no school. Right?
Let me see.
I have something to add what Dipti said. May I?
Yeah.
So, Dipti, I mean, at least this is my personal trouble. Is that sometimes I ask myself, why have I spent more than a decade learning something when in my everyday life I don't use them? The fact is I use them. I mean, I of course I wish to use more, but there is a lot of resistance of using it. The moment I start to speak in that fashion and try to deal my everyday uh, under the framework of all the learnings which I have, say, may it be physics or chemistry or biology or economics or political science or whatever, immediately people recognize that to be not very emotional, as if it is a very geeky or nerdy way of doing things. So there is a great resistance from our own people in the society not to put things under the knowledge that we have learned. So it is a struggle. So one hand, so what we do generally, you will see that most of us do is that we separate. So in our work life, we just use whatever we have learned or whatever we have learned for the work and use it as much as possible. So our doctor becomes a doctor in the hospital. The moment she comes back, she becomes a normal person. Now she cannot talk in terms of cells or viruses and germ theory. She cannot anymore. Same with the engineer, same with the programmer, same with everybody. as if we are not being human if we start to talk under those frameworks.
But Arun, I mean, isn't your life full of advertising and marketing gyan? I mean, inside happening in front of you in your everyday life? And wouldn't we want to know where we're being misled? Because you have the insight. But I'm an outsider. I'm being, I'm being misled by all of the gimmicks that are out there. I would love to know what are the gimmicks out there.
It is not only about advertisement, Shati. Probably I have a little bit of knowledge about physics, chemistry, maybe a little bit, much less, about statistics, about politics, about economics. But the moment I have, probably not with you, probably with somebody else, or probably with you, I don't know yet. If I start to have that discussion, probably you will get tired. Probably you will be overwhelmed with the continuous rigorous that thought process. Probably will not be, I'm just probably hallucinating, probably I will be overwhelmed. Generally in our discussions, when we are having discussions, really we have very less rigorous discussion about things, and we love to talk in terms of vague endearing terms. That is evident simply because it is the norm, or probably it is kind of inclusive that everyone can join that talk. uh, the moment, I mean, try it out, that the moment we begin to talk in terms of very strict scientific, or even some other theories that has come from, some art faculties, people will not appreciate it.
But I think this story worked because it's something that we don't really understand, but we've heard about this chaos theory and entropy and something, more chaos, yet our lives are more organized than before. So how in the world we don't understand it? We have heard about it. It's a common topic. If she had talked about some principle or the other, Avogadro's law, nobody would have understood it. She took a topic that the general educated people who have gone through science curriculum, class 12 curriculum, they have heard about it and they don't understand it. And here's more to that you don't understand. She did not take something that would be understood only on a graduate school level. In which case, true. And we do, as readers, like to believe that we know our class 12 stuff, or we can think about it. It makes us feel good that, we're smart enough to think about it because we know our class 10, 11, 12 stuff.
Swati, we can Google everything nowadays. I mean,
Right.
no knowledge is,
But maybe people
No,
won't.
even then, Shati, I mean, even then, I mean, I learned it long time ago. I'm going to be absolutely wrong about it. But entropy itself is a very difficult concept.
Right.
I think it stems from the second law of thermodynamics or something. I don't remember exactly. And itself is a very complicated one. Is it true? Is it?
I've read about entropy like so many times since, and I've tried to understand it. I can't wrap my head around what exactly it is. Even with this story, yeah, I can't.
So what really happened in this story? I mean, as per I understand, it is really not about entropy. It just hinted toward it. Yeah. The moment if it were an essay or a completely understanding, I'm kind of an explanation about entropy, I don't think people will read it anymore. Though entropy itself is very fascinating, interesting, and it is probably controls more of our life than this story or literature put together. I don't know. But this is the way our mind works. We don't wish to know about entropy, not so much. Rather wish to know about Sarah Boyle's personal life, what is happening to her, why she is throwing eggs. Because human beings are that way. We are emotionally attuned. Too much of rationality, too much of concept, ideas, abstraction, tire us. We cannot help it.
That's why she's gone into the very basics, only a few definitions. That's it.
Yes,
Which is there in my class 10 textbook also.
No,
gone beyond that. Yeah. We don't also understand it, but we like to think that yes, we know entropy.
No, there are Shati very interesting. When she writes about, of course, right, my memory. So please forgive me if I'm being a little wrong. When when she was mentioning about light, she says light is an agency or something. I said, how come light is an agency? I mean, does it have the property of an agent? And then says because of that, the object is being visible to the observer. Okay, now I'm thinking a lot of problem there. Okay, a lot of problem. I'm thinking, oh, I have to think much more deeply about it. Okay, what she's saying, because this is not the way I have understood light. Okay, and then the explanation a little bit there, I said, oh, I really have to. And the moment I get into that, then I said, oh, I need much more preparation, much more thought process, much more time. Then probably I stop myself doing it. But what I'm trying to say here is that she's not being preliminary. Some of the places she's actually suggesting something which is very deep.
But Arun, if I may just attempt an answer to your question that why human mind works like this and why we are more interested in Sarah Bowles' personal life than entropy, the answer is altruism, right? It is so ingrained in our genes to talk about human values rather than object or materials, because that is how the race has survived. It's a Darwinian in that sense. It's been ingrained in us to think more about an individual than an object.
There is
So
also a possibility. I'm sorry, I'm just interrupted. Please finish it, please.
no, that was my point.
There is a
Possibly that
possibility.
is why we are.
There is a possibility, Kinjal. I have thought about a little bit long time ago, probably. Is that the universe is far more complex than our cognitive capability. Far more complex. And so what we do what we can. What we can, we might not be able to understand that truth or the basic, fundamental nature of the universe. We might not be able to do it ever. But what we can is that I can smile at you and make you my friend. That is within my capability. So what happens, we human beings do whatever we can. Not that what we should have or what would have helped us more.
Okay. We have 10 minutes. I have a writing exercise. Okay. Can you see this? Everyone is on mute. I can't hear anyone. Because of the screen sharing, I can't see anyone. So
Yes,
please.
we can see it.
Yeah,
We can
we
see
can
it.
Give me 10 sentences what a walk to your home is like, with something serious on your mind. It should be on your mind. It can be your protagonist or you in first person. Death or sickness of a loved one or money problems, and a big part of the environment around that protagonist missing. Is it making sense? I came up with this at 3:30 last night when I was preparing all these notes. Is it making sense?
It is making sense to me. It is just making me a little afraid that how am I going to write 10 sentences in 9 minutes or 8 minutes?
Yeah, that's what I said. Think about the walk. Don't think about everything around it. And you can cop out and say that it was a dream and all, but I'd actually want the thing around you to be missing. I'd actually want the sea, mountains, the land, the sky, or any of this one thing to be missing.
What do you mean by that? Do you mean that if you're in an urban setting, there will be no sea, right? Or you're saying that you should be by the sea, but there's no sea? Kind of a
There
surreal.
should be a sea. There is no sea.
Okay, that way. Okay.
Like
surreal.
Because in this, in the story that we read, there's a metaphorical comparison drawn between the chaos in the universe and the chaos in Sarah Bowles' life, right? So a big part of you is gone. Maybe focus on that thing, and a big part of the world is also gone, literally. So
Yeah, it's similar to, at least from what I understand, is like, make me feel coffee, but don't say the word coffee. Or write the word coffee.
Yeah,
Is
write
it similar
about coffee
to?
without using the word coffee. So
Yeah.
A little bit, but not exactly.
Not exactly, but I
like
think
he wants an external part of the environment to be missing.
Yeah.
No, wait a second. So I am seeing a sea, but there is no sea, right?
The sea was there, but it's missing. It's missing.
I would.
But it's missing from. It's really not there physically where I'm walking.
It should be there, but it's not.
What?
In the writing
One
part,
sec.
like
The
clarity.
mountains-
Clarity. I'm walking home. There are mountains, or are they not?
There were mountains,
As a reader,
but they are
from
not.
okay.
But they're not anymore. You're walking home. I don't want to give any more like spoon feeding because it becomes too much of a singular story. There were mountains.
No, but this is a constraint. No, like make the constraint clear. Because
Yeah, I don't think you're spoon feeding yet.
You were walking home. Yeah, there's something on your mind, and you do notice that something is missing in your world,
Okay.
in the physical world. Okay, go with that. Maybe I've written too much here. I shouldn't have given too much
But
information.
I was thinking that if I walk home with something on my mind, I probably wouldn't notice a lot of the environment around me anyway. So,
yeah.
But if you're saying it's there and it's not there, and I should probably observe that that's not there. Okay. All right.
How much time do you need?
How much do we have?